Thank you to Sega and Atlas for providing the key of the DLC for content purposes. All footage recorded on the PC version of the game. So about 7 months after the release of Persona 3 Reload, which is absolutely crazy to think it's been that long already, the game has finally dropped its biggest DLC yet, that being the episode Aigis DLC, of course. After putting 25 hours into the DLC since release, I have got a lot to say about it. But more importantly, I want to tell you everything you need to know about it so you can decide if you think it's worth that $35 asking price. This will be spoiler free, and I'll be going over the story, the gameplay, the differences it had from FES, and all that good jazz. Let's go ahead and get started with the story. I don't want to waste your time. The story of The Answer has always been a favorite of mine, and I loved what it did with the Persona 3 narrative. It takes place a few weeks after the main storyline, which is called The Journey, and it delves into the regrets and issues that arose from how things turned out. It's extremely emotional, and it provides a lot of incredible insight into the characters and how they cope in different ways, and it's always felt the most human in the series to me with how they approach regret, emotions, and stuff like that. For some more context, in this chapter, time has suddenly begun to repeat itself on the date March 31st, and you play as Aigis, who assumes the role of the wild card in the place of the protagonist. You explore the new dungeon known as the Abyss of Time and work together to figure out the truth behind the abrupt appearance of a new Tartarus-like dungeon filled with shadows. A new figure known as Metis appears as well and acts as your guide and ally to the dungeon. It's mostly the same in terms of story when compared to FES, but what I will say is that unlike how I felt with the main game, where it felt very similar to the original game in terms of writing, in my opinion anyways, the remake of The Answer has some significant changes and important moments that could be divisive for some people. Now, it all still results in the same outcome, so there's no need to worry in that aspect, but the writing and voice direction changes things a pretty large amount, and I'm divided on whether I like it or not. I don't think it's bad by any means though. I feel like they did do a good job and the impact is still there, but there's definitely more changes in this DLC than there were in the base game in my opinion, and since this is a shorter story, it's more noticeable. This extends to the animated cutscenes as well. Those are probably the biggest example, where the animated cutscenes look a lot different. For those who didn't play FES though, because honestly I doubt a lot of you did, I don't think you'll have any major issues with the story or anything I just said. As I mentioned before, it's all the same more or less, and it's still done well, so don't let the comparisons I made deter you because I do still love the story a lot, and I think you will too. And it's actually improved on in some ways with the hangout events that they added. In between the dungeon crawling, you can return to the dorm and hang out with your party members to unlock their characteristics as you did in the base game, but it also adds some more insight on the characters themselves. Since tensions are higher in The Answer than the base game, it can be interesting to see how the characters behave under the circumstances, and the hangout events do a great job of showcasing that. Also, I'm not sure if this needs to be said or not, but I want to be clear, The Answer does not have social links or just any real social sim aspects whatsoever. No social links, no social stats to raise, nothing like that. It's strictly gameplay and dungeon crawling besides the aforementioned hangout events, so just keep that in mind. The biggest complaint I can give for The Answer, and this is the case for both the Reload and FES versions, is that the pacing is very lopsided. You'll be spending roughly 80 to 90% of your time dungeon crawling and the rest on the main storyline. If you don't like Reload's dungeon crawling aspect, then straight up, this DLC is not for you. I personally loved it, so I had a blast playing through it, and they actually balanced it very well. It's probably my favorite gameplay loop in the entire series at this point if I can be honest. So let's transition into the gameplay portion of the review. This is very funny to say considering what the topic of my last video was, but this DLC is actually pretty hard, at least on the Heartless difficulty which I played on. While I didn't die too many times, the game was very noticeably more challenging than the base game, and that is something I didn't really expect. Now, I know not everyone wants it to be hard or cares about that, so I'm happy to say that The Answer finally has a difficulty option select. In FES, it was locked to a default difficulty, but here you have more options, which is always good. Just keep in mind that all of this gameplay section is based on the Heartless difficulty and my own personal experience. So immediately as I began this DLC, I was like, alright, let's see what's going on. I noticed you immediately have Theurgy unlocked, which is great, but no characteristics or second Theurgy yet, which ties into the hangout events mentioned in the story section since that's how you unlock them. Based on that, my next immediate thought was how the game would be balanced around you having Theurgy from the very start. And let me tell y'all, shit got real quick. On the third floor of the very first area, I got fucking obliterated. You do so little damage and the enemies hit like a tank. You have to make use of theurgy as well as buffs and debuffs to make it through. And while this is the case for the early game of most Persona titles, in this DLC it never got easier. From the very first floor to the last, I had to make use of buffs and debuffs as well as theurgy to get by, and that is fucking awesome to me as a longtime player. I got all the way to level 88 and the standard floor enemies were still a decent threat, which is not something that happens in any other game in this series. The battles are longer, harder, and it requires much more thought than the base game. And this is of course the case for the bosses themselves too. So if you felt that Reload was too easy, then I'm happy to say they might have fixed your issues in this DLC. Oh, speaking of theurgies, I'll mention that Aigis has a few specific theurgies for herself that the pro tag didn't have, so that's really cool as well, and they look great. My favorite addition to the gameplay in this DLC is the inclusion of the monad doors. Just like in the base game, every few floors or so you'll be given a door you can go through to fight some tough foes, but they made even this harder. Besides the fact that it's just harder in general in the DLC across the board, the doors now have upwards of 3 fights in a row, and there is no break between them. No chance to change your team, no chance to heal, nada. But if you win, the rewards are insane. Early on, after beating one of these doors, I got armor for Aigis that gave her auto concentrate. That is absurd to get that soon into the game, and you get items on that same tier for everyone. It's so fun to go through these tough ass battles and get some crazy good loot. But if you think doing 3 fights in a row is too hard or you're not ready for it, then there's no problem, because instead of there just being 1 door, there's now 3, each of which having a differing amount of battles ranging from 1 to 3. The less fights, the less rewards, and vice versa. It's a fantastic system. Actually, hold on, I cannot believe it took me this long to mention this, but they finally added the compendium to the answer. In Fez, you did not have a compendium, and my god, that made the game absolutely miserable. But in Reload you have it, and it makes the game so much more fun, it's unreal. Straight up, if it didn't have a compendium, I would call this DLC strictly bad. That's how much it helps. With how hard the game can be, you're gonna want to make personas to deal with certain bosses, and if you didn't have the option to easily do that with the compendium, then that's just a no-no. Something else that Fez didn't have was skill cards, so that makes the persona building aspect a lot better as well, and there's actually a way to duplicate skill cards. You can spend a Twilight Fragment to duplicate any card you want, which is a very nice quality of life. Of course, with the Twilight Fragments comes the chests you can open in the Abyss of Time to get various items to help you out. But that was in the base game, so I won't go into that, but it's good to know that it's still there. Speaking of items, the way you purchase new items, craft weapons, and whatnot is via the Polonia Mall, which might not make much sense considering the story, but hey, that's why you gotta play to see what's up with that. The antique shop and all that is there as it is in the base game, so again, I won't go over this too much. Another big thing the DLC added is Elizabeth requests. Just like in the base game, you can do requests for her to obtain items, costumes, and what have you, and they're usually very straightforward. Defeat however many enemies, have a persona with this skill, you get the gist of it. It's a fun addition that incentivizes you to go above and beyond what you otherwise would. So I've talked a lot about the gameplay and mechanics themselves, but I haven't actually talked about the Abyss of Time itself and how it compares to Tartarus, so let me elaborate on that a little bit. The Abyss of Time has several different areas you need to traverse to get to the end, and as you progress, the scenery and whatnot of the floors will change, but there's an issue here. In the main game, there were about 6 different variations of the Tartarus floors that changed as you got to each block, but unfortunately, in the Abyss of Time, it reuses the same 4 set floor designs throughout the entire thing, and since most of the DLC is dungeon crawling, this can make the scenery get old real quick. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the floors look amazing, and they have different layouts to them, but again, they can get repetitive after a while. I mean, the game takes anywhere from 20 to 30 hours to beat, and there are 4 floor designs. I think at least 1 or 2 more would have done wonders here. I don't think this is a make or break for the DLC, but it's certainly disappointing. The last thing to mention is that after you complete the DLC, if you want to do New Game Plus, then I'm sad to say that is not an option in this DLC. Instead, you're taken back to before the final boss where you can tackle a new set of challenges and fights, which include the hilarious inclusion of the Joker from Persona 5 boss, which, ironically, might be the hardest boss in the entire series. Overall, the gameplay of the DLC is probably my favorite in the series just because it gives you so many broken options, more broken than what was even in the base game, but actually does a good job of balancing the difficulty level around that. So for me personally, it's a 10 out of 10. Just remember that the gameplay portion is the vast majority of what you're doing in the answer, so it's more important than any other game besides Persona 1 and 2 that they get it right, and I'm glad to say they did. The next topic I want to shift to is the music, and boy oh boy do I have something to say here. I have never seen a game have more of a difference in the quality of music than this DLC. One second I'm listening to one of my favorite songs in the franchise, and then the next I'm listening to audible diarrhea in my headphones. If y'all have watched my other videos, you know I'm usually quite positive toward things I don't like too much, but they made a remix that I think is so fucking awful that I can't believe that they put it in the DLC. Before I go in on that though, let me talk about the positives of the music first. The new battle theme Don't is one of my favorite battle themes in the entire series, topping even its going down now from the base game for me personally, which is saying something because that's also one of my favorites. The upbeat tune and the depressing lyrics make combat fun and engaging, but it also represents the entire story perfectly. And this is one of those songs that make me want to go on a damn marathon or just run or something. It's crazy good. Then there's the Mass Destruction Fest Reload remix, which is a hilarious title to me, but that's besides the point. At first, I really didn't care for this song too much because I didn't care for the Mass Destruction Reload remix in the base game, but after doing battles for countless hours straight, it grew on me a lot. Lotus Juice went berserk on his verse, and while I still don't like Takahashi's section too much, it isn't as bad as I once felt it was. And finally, the last song I'll talk about in depth for the positives is Interstice of Time. The original song from Fest is one of my all-time favorite dungeon themes, so I was really interested to see how they would change it for Reload, and I'm really happy to say that they did a great job with this one. The song progresses and adds more and more instruments and aspects to it as you get deeper into the abyss and learn the truth, and that is the coolest shit ever to me. The beginning is really empty and hollow, but by the end it's determined and enthusiastic. It really emphasizes that feeling that you're getting closer and closer to the truth and the finale of everything you've been working toward. A perfect dungeon theme, and it never got old for me. But it is important to say that this is the only dungeon theme in the game. Like I said though, it's constantly changing, so it isn't a big deal. It's just like the Tartarus theme. Alright, let me talk about that horrendous remix I was going on about, and that is 331. 331 was one of my favorite songs from Persona 3 Fest, and my god y'all, they ruined it. At first I was like, oh hell yeah, this is pretty good, and then like a fucking Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare, I'm hit with this.
Yeah. Cut the shit off, bro. I gotta cut the shit the fuck off.
Like, Jesus, dude, what the hell is that? It sounds like one of those worst beat of all time meme videos that were popular back then, but this is serious. I wish I could have gotten this on video, but I was streaming the game to my homies, and when they heard the song, they all in sync went, yo, what the hell? So for that, I thank this remix, because that was funny. But good lord, man, this is one of the worst Persona songs I've ever heard. Besides that remix though, the songs range from just as good as the originals in Fest to better than Fest, so I can't hate on it too much even with my disdain for 331. Persona always bangs in the music department, so this shouldn't be too shocking to hear. Alright, we've gone over the story, the gameplay, the dungeons, the music, and all kinds of stuff, so now there's only one real question that remains. Is this DLC worth purchasing at the $35 price tag? Well, I think the story is fantastic, the gameplay is amazing, and the music is good. So for me personally, I'd say yes. But again, that's because I absolutely loved the gameplay. If you don't care about the dungeon crawling too much, then while I do recommend you play the DLC through at least once, I would wait for a sale. It just isn't worth $35 if you aren't really into the combat of Persona 3 Reload like I am. For all the praise I've given this DLC, the fact they're putting it behind the full price $35 expansion pass is egregious. There really should have been an option to purchase it standalone for like $15 to $20, because at that price I think it's fine. But $35 is a tall ask when you think about how it's half the price of the game itself, with much less than half the amount of content. While I'm glad they didn't do a re-release this time around for full price like they did for P3 Original to P3 Fest, it's still important to call these things out. With all that said, I'll let you make your own decision on whether it's worth it or not since I've given you everything you needed to know. That's all I have to say regarding this review though. What do you think about episode Aigis? Are you gonna buy it, skip it, wait for a sale? If you have any thoughts regarding the DLC, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. And if you have any questions on something I might have missed, I'd love to answer it for you, so feel free to ask. With that said, it's been your boy Yandere Gogeta, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out everybody, and have a great day.